feet elevated hamstring bridge. So we have a small plyo box here set up on 14 inches. A bench works, another box with a little bit higher surface, a couch works. Anything that you can get your feet elevated to where your knees and your hips are bent close to a 90-90. And then I also have a yoga block. You don't have to have a yoga block. You could use like a pillow or a small ball or something. The yoga block is there for us to just keep a little tension, our knees together, and help maintain like a neutral position. So when we get set up, as I'd mentioned, we're gonna use the box to elevate our feet, so that way we can get our heels on the top side of the box to bias our hamstrings a little bit more. Now it's important that you are aware of your shoe wear and the surface that you're on. I've seen people that have done this with like a really exaggerated heel. Like a lot of times Nikes have like a super sharp heel to where it's creating like an angle less than 90, and it really forces them to like pivot around on their heel, and it can kind of change the tension or where you feel it. I prefer something that's close to barefoot or like a normal heel curvature. In the intro video, I was barefoot, and if you go single leg barefoot with socks on a wood surface, your feet start to really slide and makes it really challenging. So just be aware of your shoe type and the surface that you're using. So feet elevated, and I'm gonna go yoga block between my knees, and I'm just putting some tension into that yoga block. I'm not squeezing as hard as I can. You can either relax your feet or you can pull your feet toward you. Play around with your setup. I don't think there is a right or wrong. If you point your toes, it's a little bit harder because it biases the hamstring a little bit more. We like to cue arms crossed just so you can't drive your elbows into the floor to help create this extension motion that we're going for. So arms crossed, and then what I like to cue is put some tension into your heels into the box. Slowly tilt till your tailbone pops up just high enough to slide a piece of paper, and you'll feel tension in your hamstrings already. And then from here, we're trying to bridge up to where I'm in a straight line from my shoulders to my knees, and then coming back down to that bottom position. So we can regress this, and then we can progress it to scale it as needed. So ways that I can scale, either to make it harder or to make it easier. So if I wanna make it a little bit easier, I can simply just not bridge as high and come back down. Maybe I bridge up a little bit and have an isometric hold and then come back down. So many different ways that we can scale back. And then if I wanna make it harder, ways that I can do that, if I wanna stick with double leg, is I can add a pause at the top, come back down. I could add a dumbbell or a weight on my hips, bridge up, come back down. I could add a tempo, so maybe I go up 1, 2, 3, pause, 2, 3, and then come back down, 2, 3. And then we could progress to a single leg. So maybe a single leg is too hard, so if I go up with one leg, it's too hard. So what I can do is I can bridge up with two legs, pick up, come back down. Saw me kind of cheat there for a second. You want to really make sure that you're keeping those arms crossed because it's way easier to drive your elbows into the floor. So let me repeat that. Bridge up, pick up a leg, come back down, and then eventually going in to my single leg variant. So many different ways that we can scale it. And then once you start scaling to like that single leg variation, you can make that easier or harder as well, relative to how high you go, how many reps you do, and if you're adding any sort of external load. So like maybe I'm going up with 2, coming down with 1. Maybe when I start to go to single leg, I just don't bridge up as high. And then I increase height as I'm able, relative to how many sets and reps that we're doing. And then we can increase the weight or the weight demand by putting a weight on your hips, or we could add tempos, or we could add pauses throughout a range of motion, etc. So your programming is typically going to depict what we're doing in terms of single leg, if we're going to go up with 2, down with 1, if we're going to do double leg the entire time. And then it's up for you to kind of play around with your setup. Where we do not want to feel this is your low back. If you feel it in your low back, more than likely you're driving with your elbows if your arms aren't crossed, or you're arching your back. So that's why we like that cue of Digging the heels into the bench slightly to start, so you tilt your tailbone off, so when you bridge up, you feel the load into those hamstrings.